Welcome to another special episode of DDG Presents. We are recording this on Sunday, July 12th, a little bit after the Ubisoft Forward event. So typically, like we've been doing over the last couple of weeks with any events or special announcements, we are recording something as soon as we possibly can. This is the first event that I've missed live.
I did as well, even though I had the option, but I was worried there would be some moments that I could just ignore. So I was like, I'll just watch it recorded so then I can skip if anything is boring. Luckily, nothing was boring, but...
Nah, it's pretty heavy pre-show. Typical Ubisoft doing a lot of pre-show things.
Yeah.
And talking about some stuff. I mean, they do a good job. They put on a good show. But we're going to jump right into it. So you are listening to Digital Days Gaming. If this is the first time that you found us, thank you so much for listening, downloading. If you're able to leave us a review, we would greatly appreciate it. If you found us by looking for Ubisoft coverage or any coverage of the games that we're going to talk about today, we appreciate that, and your subscription means a lot to us. So if you could, share it with your friends, retweet us, follow us on the main account, like us on Facebook, all that stuff will be linked in the description. And if you've been listening to the show for a long time, you know that the best way to help us is to just get more eyes on the show and help us grow. And one of the ways that we can do that is by covering as many events as possible, such as this Ubisoft Forward event. So this will show up on the feed as a bonus episode, and we will still record another episode this week as well. All right. So let's get right into it. So first off, they released a tweet a couple hours before the event. You want to go over that?
Yeah, so Ubisoft, if you've been following the regular show, they have had a series of allegations made against employees all over their industry, or all over like their staff, from HR to community managers to directors of games. So going into this event, they had to address it. They came out early on in the day to say that Ubisoft Forward comes out during a time of big internal change. Because all the content has been pre-recorded, we wanted to recognize that the issues we're currently dealing with won't be addressed directly in the show. We still have significant work to do and are committed to this process. We will provide more updates soon. So because this was a pre-recorded event, they didn't want to address it. I didn't expect them to address it in this very consumer-facing video, because it just would be odd, especially with the various allegations going against employees. It would just be weird if they did. I'm glad they released a statement, so you couldn't come out with a hot take afterwards that they didn't address it during the video, if that makes sense.
Right.
They prefaced it.
To add to your point, it would also be weird because there are probably the majority of people that are video game fans or Ubisoft fans, or even fans of so much stuff leaking over the last couple of days for this event, for somebody to turn this on and watch this and they lead with something like that would be very weird to people. Like, I don't know what's going on. Like, what are you talking about? Like, because we know about it because there are some people that we interact with that have been mentioned in this, and we follow tons and tons of streamers and community people, and we're involved in this industry, so we see a lot of it, and there's been a lot of just cross relationships of friends or friend of a friend, so we obviously see it more, but the average consumer wouldn't know who these people are. Like, if you went up to even a hardcore Assassin's Creed fan and said, hey, who produces the game, I would bet money that they couldn't tell you.
Yeah, for sure. And it is an ongoing thing, so ongoing that yesterday, Saturday, July 11th, or it might have been Friday, they announced 3 people were resigning, 2 of which had a ton of allegations against them. I'm sorry, I cannot pronounce some of these names, but I usually have heard this person's name just because he is the chief creative officer, Serge. His last name I can't pronounce, I'm sorry. It's like Hescati or Hescote. He was like, beyond the CEO, the co-founder, Yves, he was second in command in terms of he would be able to greenlight or shut down a project. So he was considered untouchable amongst like the employees of Ubisoft. So he has resigned due to everything that's happened. And then you have Yannis Mallet, who's the CEO of the Canadian studios, also has a bunch of allegations against them. They resigned. And then also the global head of HR, Cecilia Cornett, resigned. There's no known allegations against that person, other than the fact that
she's the global head of HR.
Yes, exactly. And a lot of stuff happened that was reported to her that went unreported, or to that person. Yeah. So that person, Cecile Cornett, it just made sense that they resigned, just because all the stuff that's happening. It's really hard for the company to be like, we are going to change, and then have the same people in charge of those departments. So those people all resigned or were let go, but it's executive world, so people just resign. They don't actually get fired. So Ubisoft is making changes. So they are doing a lot of things. And then there's still a bunch of stuff against some community managers and some producers, like the Assassin's Creed producer, or director actually, is currently going through an investigation. So there's a lot of moving parts, but like they couldn't open the show being like, hey, these 3 people that you may have never heard of are resigned. So we just wanted to get this stuff up front, just because we don't want to ignore all of this, because this is like major stuff. But they did this away from the show, so now we will jump into Ubisoft Forward and talk about some of the games that they presented in this relatively short. It was like 45-minute presentation.
Yeah. So the first thing that I noticed, that a little bit of a personal note, is like I love to see like the people that we have relationships with move up. Neelam has been somebody that's been very nice to me for years, of helping do things and getting us into the Ubisoft press conference. And Yusuf is a very good friend of mine. We knew each other even before he was working for Ubisoft PR, just again because it was a friend of a friend thing, and we played games together. So to watch these people like kind of grow up and evolve in their jobs is always kind of cool. So they both got to host this, and that was really cool to see. So that's Michael's had a little bit of interaction with Neelam, and almost none with Yusuf, and I run into Yusuf sometimes at events, and he's a good guy. So it's really cool. Yeah. So, and just watching, like, he was an intern like 4 or 5 years ago, and now he's one of the lead streaming hosts that they have. So it's really cool to see. They started off with Watch Dogs Legion, which is something that obviously got pulled off the table earlier. We saw it at E3 last year. It got dated, and then it said, we're delaying it, and we're not telling you until when. And typical Ubisoft fashion that they've been doing over the last couple of games, they showed... At first, when I was watching this, I'm like, they're not showing anything. Like, what is this? Like, is this CG? And then we find out it's a short film inspired by the game.
Yeah, I was really confused by it, because I was like, is this real people? And then you would see some animation stuff, and you're like, wait, is this gameplay? Or not gameplay, like in-engine cutscene? Yeah. I was really confused by it. It looks cool.
So now, what I don't know is, was this the whole film?
I have no idea. Will this be released on Amazon like the previous stuff has been? Yeah,
because they've done something for Far Cry. They did something for Ghost Recon, Breakpoint. So they've done a couple things. The Far Cry ones were really cool. Just kind of telling, deeper into the story. So, but they did go right into gameplay after that, showing the video showcasing dozens or so characters that you can play as during the missions. Again, just doubling down, which I'm happy to see, because it was something that you and I were both very concerned about. But they're doubling down on the any character, anywhere, any origin story. But at the same time, I still have my concerns, because they actually showed a scene of 2 different characters, but them talking to somebody on a computer monitor saying the exact same line, and then the other character, 2 different characters again, pretty much saying the same thing but different.
Yeah, I have a feeling we're going to get a lot of that throughout this game, and also I think it's going to be way more restricted than when we first saw the game. Like when we saw this clip, it's like, here are the 15 players or characters you can use for this mission, as opposed to like the first trailer of like any single NPC is playable. It looks like it is going to be more refined, and that this might be limitations for hardware. But yeah, I have a feeling that for cutscene purposes or anything where one of your NPC or playable characters talks to someone, there might just be like a swap of a couple different and phrases.
I guess what I just hope though is that as you're selecting characters, because when they showed us this before, that you're kind of like looking into their background and you're figuring things out. They'll have strength and they'll have weaknesses and they'll have abilities, and like almost like a class system, and that'll kind of should help you decide if you like to have a balanced team. And then they didn't talk about it during this event, but the game does have permadeath in it. So if you lose your character, like they're gone. If they die if they die, they're dead. You have a chance, I believe, to give up and you can be like captured, and then you can have your other characters like save them. But if you choose to like do a second wind and then you die, like you're done. So all your leveling and everything is gone. All your upgrades are gone. I just hope that if you're picking, the drone specialist and then you're picking like the aggressive like enforcer, that their origin missions don't end up being very similar. And like I just hope that there's at least, if they put, and I don't even know the number, but 12 to 16 different style missions in there, I don't really think people as they play through this game are going to be recruiting more than 16 characters.
Yeah, I don't expect that either. I have a feeling based on like the special class or whatever, those all origins will be the same.
Yeah, so what do you think? Like 6 or 8 classes, maybe, even if that many, 4 to 6.
Yeah, and no matter what character you pick, like what version of that class you pick, their origin's going to be pretty much the same. I have a feeling no matter what, like the old lady that they keep showing and then people really like to like focus on, I'm sure there are like 5 different versions of that old lady, and the origin
all
is
the same
all going to be
old
the
lady
same.
mission. So
Yeah. That just makes sense, like logistic wise. So this is going to be one of those things where once we see it, we'll probably be able to poke holes in.
Yeah, it's still a
how
really
it's
cool.
structured.
It's still a really cool concept, and I hope that they are able to surprise us with enough that where it doesn't feel samey. And I don't want to like be 6 hours into the game and I lose one of my characters that I'm really attached to, and then I go after recruiting somebody else of similar attributes and then like go back and almost do the exact same thing I just did 6 hours ago. Like I don't really want to do that because I lost the character, so I hope that there's at least a little diversity in it.
Yeah, I have a feeling for the casual or the one and done playthrough, it's going to be pretty solid and you're not going to see many holes. It's going to be the completionist players, the ones that want to see every bit of content.
Unlock a character for each version of class to get the platinum or something.
Yeah, they are going to be the ones that are going to get frustrated and will probably see like issues, throughout their playthrough or multiple playthroughs. I have a feeling if you're just going to play this game one time and you're not
3 to 6 characters, you'll be fine.
Yeah, you're going to be fine, and you're going to be impressed by like the amount of content you see from that. It's when you decide, there's 50 characters that I could play as, and you want to unlock all 50, then you're going to start seeing the flaws. But if you just want 1 or 2 characters per class, you'll probably be really impressed with what they do. Yeah. And I honestly would be that player probably. Just play it once, breeze through it.
I mean, I enjoyed Watch Dogs 2 tremendously. Like just the gameplay mechanic of it. It was so much fun. And then they showed off like a construction worker who carries a wrench and a nail gun as his primary weapon. They showed off a drone expert, use her own hacks, and she can actually hack enemy drones. So they're kind of like, if you don't want to like get in the grit, you don't have to, and you can actually recruit Albion officers, which is the corporation that's supposed to be protecting London. Soccer hooligans.
I like that one.
Yeah, professional hitman. So they were showing off a couple more characters. And I think it's kind of cool because you can kind of, it's that play your way aspect of like, I really, I still remember like playing Watch Dogs 2 where I would try not to like enter the building until like I had it really scouted out. Like I really wanted to play that way, and I was using the remote control cars and the drones and the hacking and the, and the distraction tools versus just, because I have enough games that I play that I can go in there and slide around and shotgun everything if I want to. And so like being able to play it differently and figure out things that are, what's fun for the player, and then say, hey, you know what? This time I want to do this, and I want to just hit everybody with the blunt end of a shotgun. So I'm just going to do that. So I think that having those kind of choices are cool. It's just one of those ones that I just hope the mission structures, and it's an the campaign missions, because I'm assuming this is going to have a somewhat linear open world style campaign. Yes, I realize that's like a broad sentence I just used, but there'll be spots on the map that are missions that no matter what characters you have, the missions are the same. Like I fully expect that. I just hope that you don't feel, because you have a drone expert and you don't have an enforcer, that you feel restricted. Like that's what I hope doesn't happen.
Yeah, that it's open enough that you won't regret like the path you've chosen, basically.
Or feel like you have to go get one to complete the mission. Like that, I don't ever want to go in and do the mission and realize, hey, you know what? I don't have the drone expert or the the correct hacker, and I have to go find this person just to complete this mission. I want it to be able to allow somebody to, I guess, maybe play through without not killing anybody, and also be able to kill everything and break every door. You know.
Yeah, that makes sense, because they're pitching this as play whichever way you want, and that would force you to play specific ways. The only concern I have with the game, because everything they showed looked actually really fun to play, the only thing I'm having, and it's a problem I have with most games from Ubisoft that aren't Assassin's Creed, is the world is super serious.
Mm-hmm.
And the cutscenes are super serious, but then the gameplay is open world shenanigans. Yeah. And when I was watching the cutscenes, and they're, it's like police state Brexit type stuff, and like the people rebelling against the government, and like that's happening right.
They showed in the trailer the head of the company shooting the police commissioner in the head.
Yeah, so which is like it's over exaggerated, but it was definitely certain aspects of it where I'm just like, some of this stuff is kind of happening in the real world, and then they're like, oh, you can play as a drunk hooligan, and I'm just like, oh man, I hope they can find a good balance between that. I
think they did in Watch Dogs 2, because Watch Dogs 2 was like taking place during like an election campaign, and you were trying to build followerships and to expose somebody, and they almost like push the envelope far enough. Like they keep pushing the crate to the very, very edge, and then they never push it over. They didn't do it in Far Cry in Far Cry 5 with the cults and the religion. They didn't do it in Watch Dogs with the political aspect. They got really, really close, and they've gotten close a lot of times, and they start pushing the edge, and you're like, are they going to do it? And then they don't. And it's just like, okay. Like, so they push the envelope far enough. Not that it would matter either way, but I just want to see somebody sometimes like really just break the wall.
Yeah, break the wall is one thing, but it's definitely one of those things where society in real life is getting close to breaking that wall, so it's one of those things
and again, I just feel like they're a victim of circumstance of like when they started developing this game 2.5 years ago, they didn't know that this stuff could,
Yeah, exactly. So it's just and it's coming out during like election season, so it's gonna be interesting, at least on the North American or the United States side, of just seeing this and be like, oof, okay.
Yeah, I'll be curious to how far they push the third-party corporation controlling a city, against what appears to be against maybe the prime minister's wishes.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be pretty interesting to see. I gave this game an award, an E3 award, when I've seen it. Like, I'm very interested in it. Like I said, I really enjoyed Watch Dogs 2. I didn't give Watch Dogs 1 a fair shake, and a lot of people are like, don't even try, just because of some of the gameplay that's in there. Some people said that it doesn't have any attachment. So, and the each game doesn't appear to. There was some attachment in 2 to 1, but it was mostly like Easter egg driven. I expect there to be some Easter egg driven stuff, attachments for Legion to 2 and 1 as well. But if you've never played 1 or 2, I don't feel like you'll be lost if you play Legion.
No, and especially because it's taking place on a different continent, different.
It's
country.
not called Watch Dogs 3 for a reason, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
which probably expands them for the 4th Watch Dogs game. Will probably take place in a different country, or different horrible world circumstance that is potentially close to real.
We'll talk about it near the end, but I think after a certain point in time where you just need to start calling your games Watchdog : something, like continuously numbering your games gets a little crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, and then the game's coming out October 29th. Yep. We don't know. It is going to come to the next-gen consoles, but we don't know.
It'll support smart delivery on Xbox.
Yeah, so we don't know exactly, like the next version will be available, because we don't know when the new consoles will be available. But October 29th for PS4 and Xbox One, and who knows, maybe possibly the Series X and PS5, depending on when those get released.
They won't be out before October 29th.
No, probably not. It might be a week after October 29th they'll be out. Okay, and then after that we got just quick trailers for mobile versions of Valhalla, which apparently does really well. I know there's a community behind that game, but a lot of the Ubisoft games have communities that I just don't know exist for a lot of their smaller stuff.
Yeah, it's going mobile. A lot of people really like the game, and it always looks cool, but it just looks like a game I'll just get my ass kicked in if I play it.
Same. Okay, and then Might and Magic got another trailer. Nothing new for that game on mobile devices, other than like if you download today or this week, there'll be bonuses. So there's that. And then Tom Clancy's Elite Squad, which was shown off last year. This is coming to Android soon. This is just Ubisoft's Overwatch, kind of like it's just like famous characters from Ubisoft. Like they showed Sam Fisher in there from Splinter Cell, and I forget even what type of game this is going to be. I know we saw gameplay last year, but
I don't know a ton about it, and it's kind of one of those things where usually when you talk about a mobile game, it's coming out like then or within like 30 or 60 days of talking about it, and now we're like almost over a year. So like I'll be really curious to how this functions. It still looks really interesting. In terms of what they may or may not be trying to accomplish with it. But we'll have to see.
Yeah. After that, we got a thank you video to the 60 million players for Rainbow Six Siege.
Still fascinating.
Holy shit. Yeah, 5 years that game's been out.
And even in the thank you video, they talked about all the problems that they had.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
And then a small team. Like, I guess I didn't realize that as well, is it seems like that I think they were a little bit surprised at at launch how much following the game got, good, bad, and indifferent, because they were talking about a small team and what it's evolved into now, in terms of it being a top esports game and a top competitive shooter, is so fascinating. But it's just one of those things where I just wonder if they thought that this game was going to come out and just hang around for a little while they were working on something else a little bit more story driven, and then it took off. Even in a rough state, it took off.
Yeah, it took off, and it looks like it's not stopping anytime soon. It's definitely become its own platform that we'll probably see it at the next Ubi Forward, it coming to next gen consoles. And it'll probably be a platform for a while. It's definitely going to be one of those games that they're probably going to have to decide at one point. Do they continue it as a platform, or do they try and make a Rainbow Six Siege 2? Which is, something we've seen with other games where, you have to decide, are there enough people coming to the platform? But with 60 million people that have made accounts, at least, they say there's 60 million players, but we know that's not a concurrent number or anything like that. That's just total downloads. But I guess it's strong enough for them to stay committed to this game, or at least
especially not
committed.
Going free to play either, and the seasonal content and keeping, I don't know the exact number of active players or players that have logged in like this season, but they continuously release new operators, and it's one of those questions of like how many more operators can they go before a game like this needs a fresh reset,
Yeah. But then you also have to go into the problem of, if we do a fresh reset, do we have to carry over people's progress and characters?
How much crap do you get when you do a fresh reset and you bring out new operators? They're like, that's just like the one we had before. You're making me pay for it again.
Yeah. I have a feeling the next thing we hear about Rainbow Six is like crossplay. I feel like that would be the next move for them, and Ubisoft isn't afraid of crossplay. They do it for their VR games. That's probably going to be the next step for them. They're probably just not quite ready to talk about it. They'll probably wait for them to release it on the next-gen consoles, and then once it's on the next-gen consoles, crossplay is enabled, and the game has several more years of legs under it because of that.
Right.
What else? What did they show after that, Dave?
So they talked more about Hyperscape. They released Hyperscape in like a super closed format to a lot of streamers and content creators about a week ago now. And Hyperscape is currently a PC-based battle royale that takes place in a digital world, essentially. And you can pick up you can pick up these hacks on the fly, kind of like as you're looting areas and finding things. You find new hacks, which are kind of like abilities or specials that you can use, whether it's like a slam or like a blink ability, or there's a lot going on. I've watched a couple streams of these games, and there is a lot going on with a lot of movement and a lot of verticality.
Yeah, it's like Quake Unreal Engine or Unreal Tournament amount of.
I was fascinated with the verticality, and I was also fascinated with how many places you could actually go inside, like the buildings and things like that. You could go in, and the movement. It's and it's currently only on PC. So the new trailer for the Battle Royale that's that's been tested. It takes place in 2054. Technology went too fat. Blah 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 blah. Corporations made a VR game that everyone participates in. And it sounds like you can gain notoriety by doing well, but there's obviously issues going on. And the open beta is now on is available to everybody on PC.
Yes.
Yeah, and then they did a deeper look into character design, and they're talking about seasons again. So they're trying to hit that Fortnite Apex itch. I don't blame them. It seems to be something successful enough, and the seasonal content is proven to work. I just hope they start talking about consoles soon, because I like what I see on the game in terms of what I see on PC. I don't know if this could run on current gen.
It probably could. I think it could. Like, I know it's moving pretty crazy, but they could probably hit 60 frames on current gen, right? Probably.
It's a big world. I mean, I guess if Call of Duty can put 200 players on the field, like maybe they can. I mean, the biggest thing that I have, like the concept behind this is cool. The battle royales are fine. Like, I understand that there's a huge player base for those, and I get it. I've tried to check some of them out. I probably will give Hyperscape a try just to get my butt kicked again. But the thing that bothers me the most, I guess, and you can maybe speak to this a little bit more with Overwatch, is that the continuously trying to tell a story in a battle royale always seems kind of weird. Apex is trying to do that as they introduce new character class, and it almost feels like you care about it for those 5 minutes while you're watching the cutscene, but then it's like, okay, either the character fits my playstyle or they don't.
Yeah, anytime games are trying to tell like a world story, but around a battle royale or a multiplayer game, there's like
it feels flat.
Yeah, there's just a disconnect for that, to where I don't really care. Like, when I was watching the trailer, I was just like, oh, there's a story. Like, does anyone truly care that there's a story?
Are you downloading Hyperscape because the story got you, or are you downloading Hyperscape because it's a battle royale and you enjoy playing battle royales?
Yeah. You enjoy to play it so you can hear, strangers call you horrible names. Like, you're not paying attention to the world building. It's cool. The game has a great look to it and design, so I'm not knocking that. But yeah, I don't think anyone that's going to get into this game is going to be in it for the lore.
Yeah, and it's not a surprise that as big of a publisher as Ubisoft is, for them to throw their hat in the battle royale ring. It's almost expected at this point. So.
Mm-hmm. And they've proven with pretty much every game they release is they'll stick with it.
They'll support the hell out of it, yeah.
So if it doesn't hit, just give them 2 years, and they'll make it work.
So after they talked about Hyperscape and saying the beta's open for everybody, they brought Phil Spencer onto the show. He talked about Watch Dogs Legion will support smart delivery. Legion, not Legions, sorry. Will support smart delivery, like we already talked about. And then he announced that Ubisoft's team has been able to produce ray tracing on next gen, on Series X. And they talked about that I believe for Valhalla and for Watch Dogs.
Yes, yeah. I believe so.
So, and then that led right into Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Obviously, we've seen the reveal at Xbox for this, or the announcement of the game with a small reveal. Then it was at the Xbox third-party event, and now it's at their Ubisoft Forward event. Humanizing Vikings, farmer aspect was talked about.
I like that part. Yeah. Just because when you think of Vikings, you don't really think about farming. So they address that.
Some people were concerned just because of the precedent that they've set with previous Assassin's Creed games. You can play as a male Viking or as a female Viking. So they got that out of the way right away. I feel like that was a lingering question, but I also feel like it was kind of one of those things where, yeah, it'll happen. It's expected.
Mm-hmm. Especially after Odyssey.
Yeah. So the producer talked about the field research, the in-game footage time, the largest variety of enemies in an Assassin's Creed game, They showed enemy coordination,
which was kind of big because I don't know if you've played enough Assassin's Creed games, but it was always comical when you're playing Assassin's Creed. They've gotten better over the years, but oftentimes you'll be against 10 people that they'll just get in a circle around you.
1 and 9 are around you. Yeah.
Yeah, and they just watch until you kill their friend, and then it's like, okay, now it's your turn. So they finally are fixing that to some extent, which I have a feeling just means smaller groups that you will fight in, and they'll like team up a little bit.
Yeah.
But at least they're addressing a lot of different things in Assassin's Creed with this one.
Yeah, they talked about a stun system and a dual wielding. The dual wielding system looks really cool. The stealth, obviously, as an Assassin's game. Hunting and foraging regains health, and then assault.
That scares me.
Yeah, have fun storming the castles. What concerned me about what they were showing was, moving down. Like, this is that going from point A to point B and seeing 14 shiny figures. Shiny objects, like that's a little bit concerning to me because a lot of times, like, I really want to see the story that they're telling. Whether they're still telling the story about the Arbalist, or I don't even remember what it's called anymore. But is it going to still evolve around the time travel ancestor mechanic? Is that even a thing anymore? I haven't, the Desmond aspect that they had for years, and then the building your home base based on getting other, like, it just looked very, immediately I'm like, I don't want to play this game right away because I feel like I'm going to be very overwhelmed.
Yeah, like when they showed the hunting stuff and the foraging, I was just like, oh no, that just seems way more in depth than I want. I'm still interested in the game despite that, but if there's, when I see like that level of detail going into it, that's usually when I knock a game down to easy, just to save myself the trouble of having to engage too much.
It's also the worry of, if I don't do that, am I going to have a hard time doing this next mission because I don't have the tools or the abilities, or I'm not a high enough level. So anytime that a campaign-driven story game, and I guess Assassin's Creed's moving away from that, or has moved away from that for the most part. It's still there, but the side missions and the world is what it's more about. That aspect always concerns me a little bit because I really want to see what the Viking story is. Mm-hmm. But am I going to have a hard time seeing what the Viking story is because I didn't take over that little town that I rode past on the boat?
Yeah. Did your nice farming Viking raid that little village that would give you more story? And I just don't want to, like, we know Valhalla, and then we'll talk about Far Cry later. Those games are going to have that Ubisoft structure that all their open world games have had for the last 5 years, because they just started to talk about, like, they want to move away from like the standard structure that all their games kind of play the same.
Right.
So I'm fully expecting myself having to like take over villages so then I can cleanse that zone, and then that. Well,
they showed that map of allies and I'm just like, oh boy.
Yeah, so there are going to be a lot of that. Am I not going to be able to upgrade my weapons unless I like skin 30 deers?
Yeah.
If I'm going to fall into that same structure, which has kept me away from Assassin's Creed as they've gotten bigger and larger. I've moved away from the franchise.
I have friends that love this game, and they're like, "Oh, I put 57 hours in, and I'm only 60% of the way through the game." I'm like, I'm out.
Like I want to see like this story with the Vikings, like, because it's a I feel like the Vikings aren't truly like an explored thing, except for like maybe the last 10 years, or maybe less than that, 5 years, with like TV and video games and movies. So I want to see their take on it. So I'll probably pick up the game when it comes out, but it's. I want to see the story more than I want to play this game. And
yeah, for sure.
I don't want to watch like a YouTube video of someone playing the game, just because they'll probably have to engage in the grinding and all that stuff. So it'll definitely be one of those games that I'm going to have to pick up and just kind of like blinders on and see how far I can get in the story without like having to engage with the dozens and dozens and dozens of hours of like side content.
And that's fine. Like, if those people love the game and they love the combat and they love what it gives them, like, I'm all for it. But I just concerned about punishing the player that maybe doesn't care, And that's always a hard balance to have in games. It's a very, very hard balance. Some games nail it, some games don't. So.
Yeah.
And then this guy, Yves
Guillemot,
who is the co-founder and CEO, came out and says, talking about, I hope you enjoyed what you saw. And pretty much he said that there's going to be another one. There's going to be another Ubisoft Forward later this year, which is good because there's a handful of games that we know about that weren't even mentioned in this at all.
Yeah, we could. We'll talk about those like after the one more game.
So they did the one more game, and like this is where what I hinted at earlier of like, okay, like this is called Far Cry 6. They started like they did Far Cry 5, they did Far Cry New Dawn, it was called Far Cry 5 New Dawn, right? Actually, I don't remember. Yeah. But then this is Far Cry 6, and they showed a TV style opening sequence, then really revealing that it's Giancarlo Esposito. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Giancarlo Esposito. Yeah.
Yeah. So what is he known for being in? Because I can't speak to this.
Gus Fring from Breaking Bad. He's considered like his role in Breaking Bad is like one of the best like crime lord kingpin like roles in like modern television. Like he's like up there with like Scarface in terms of like drug lord like villains in like media. So getting him is a big deal, and it looks like they'll just have him do that but on a grander scale because of the role he is playing in this one.
So they show him as playing the president of a country during a revolution and teaching his child about how to be a leader using a grenade.
Which is creepy. So we still don't know who the kid is. There's like rumors that this might be a prequel. We don't really know if that to be the case. But he's teaching his kid how to be a dictator, basically, how to be a leader by putting a grenade in his kid's hands, pulling the pin from it, and then basically just seeing if the kid's willing to drop the grenade on some people. And just telling them that you just need to like take things. It's really dark. I'm still curious, who are we even going to play in this game?
Well, and that's the thing that like with the Far Cry games, and I spent an extensive amount of time with Far Cry 5 and Far Cry New Dawn. I want to go back and play like 3 and 4 just because of the time I have playing those games and it being a first-person shooter style aspect game. It's never about the player. Like they truly are ones that nail that this is you. Most of the time you're kind of unknown, or you're just like deputy or sheriff. And it's always been about the villain, whether it's the cult leader or, the twins in the Far Cry 5 and New Dawn series. It's always the focal point is the villain. And you're getting the villain's story through the character's eye. You're not getting the character's eye. It's just this person, guy or girl, that's stopping whatever's happening, and you get to see the whole aspect of the story of of the villain. So the villain is the focal point of the game, not the hero. Yeah.
Which is always an interesting concept, in that like
they do it very well though.
Yeah,
they've proven like 3, 4, 5 that that they can do it. And those characters are more known or more well known than the player you play as, because the protagonist. Again, it's first person. There's a little bit of like outfits, which I never really understood because you never really look at it. The concern, obviously, the concern and expectation hand in hand goes probably co-op, because they've done co-op over the last couple of games, and then the immediate, like it was even in our Facebook group earlier today, the immediate questions about co-op progression, because they seem to always struggle with nailing that correctly, of like, oh, if you do this with my friend, it doesn't count. Like,
will they ever get that shit right? Because it seems like they are aware of it, and they can't claim it's impossible.
Well, their other games have worked. Like they've done it with Breakpoint, and they've done it with Division, they've done it with all these other things. So I don't know why you can't. Like, it's so weird. Like they were close with Far Cry 5, where it's like, are you aware that you're playing something out of order? And it's that open world, still telling an interesting story as well. So to see how this will, I would expect this game to have probably regions, sort of like areas that you have to clear out, and you can clear them out in any order you want as you're going maybe through lieutenants to get to El Presidente. You know, and telling the story and finding out about these people and why they are how they are, or why the president is how he is, and building that demeanor for him. They'll have the little quirkiness of like some weird choices that you get to make, and it'll have. I can't wait to see what either specialists you can recruit or over the top weaponry that we'll have. Like New Dawn had that gun that shot saw blades.
Yeah.
So like all that stuff is always cool, and then seeing the how they'll make the economy work. So it's cool.
But,
and it's close. Like this is the first time they really said Far Cry 6, and it's coming out in February.
Yep, February. I don't think they specifically said platforms, but everything, just because of the Microsoft thing with the Xbox One and Series X. So it'll be out on everything in February, which
and
also
February seems to be their time when they release their numbered Far Cry games. So everybody's like, oh, why? You know, like it's just they leave like Assassin's Creed to the holiday time frame. They leave some of their other games that they think are going to be like huge franchises, and then Far Cry is still a huge franchise for them, but it just fits in that February-March nook for them.
Yeah, and it releases before the end of the fiscal year, so they have like one thing to boost their numbers. But like I said with Assassin's Creed, I worry that this game's coming out too soon, because I was really excited about the idea when they were putting that editorial team together to re-examine how they structure these games. Far Cry is another one of those games. It's just structured in a way that doesn't suit my playstyle, or in terms of usually I can only play one Assassin's Creed game a year, because, if I play 3 games a year, I feel like I played the same game with a different aesthetic. So being that close to Watch Dogs and Assassin's Creed, and knowing that all those games are kind of structured the same, it kind of worries me that it's coming out in February. But I know the editorial team's only been around for like a year, and then also now they have all these resignations they have to get through that probably affected the editorial team. So we're probably going to see the same sort of game, to where it means I might tap out from the Ubisoft games. I'll probably pick one of these 3 games to be my game. And
what's
then
really
wait.
interesting. What's really interesting to me is the area that they were showing of this taking place. Like it looks like it's taking place in a town, in a city, in a substantial city. Where, who knows? I'm sure somebody will decipher this trailer and pick out some silhouette in the background and say what it is. But the other ones, like Far Cry 5, were taking place like in a county in Montana. Like it was a big open space. And then the other Far Cry games involved a lot of helicopter and moving across broad areas. If this can be an open world, but more like something a little bit more condensed into like a city, I think it might be really interesting and could give a different gameplay loop of letting them do a little bit more stuff versus it's so open. In their caveat is you can go way over there, and like I don't want to go way over there. The boss is over there. Because like even like Ghost Recon Breakpoint is and Division has that sometimes where the map is just so big and there's so many dots on the map, and it's like okay, like those games have their place and they're great. But I would just love to, and I said this with Last of Us even, like I would just love something to just be a little bit more straight line driven.
Yeah, and that's not seem to be their thing, but they could change with this one, especially with it coming out so soon. Like all 3, like the pillars of Ubisoft.
Like Far Cry was the new thing though. Everything else we knew about.
Yeah. No, but in terms of like the pillars of Ubisoft, of their non-casual games, not their Just Dance, which is probably their biggest pillar. When you think of Ubisoft, you think of Watch Dogs, Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and some sort of Tom Clancy game.
Correct.
We're going to have 3 of their 4 main games hit within like a 5-month period.
After they just talked about that they thought they hit us too hard with Breakpoint and Division 2 at the same time.
Yes, that is my only concern, that they're almost like, I almost feel like Far Cry could be helped by just moving it just a little bit further away.
And I think that maybe their goal is to, maybe spread it out like you talked about with the editorials, but now like they've already spent this time and resource in essentially on prior gen, and they just got to get it out. I think at this point in time, like they just got to get this stuff out. I guess I'm with you. I don't want it to, but Far Cry 6 is going to run on current gen.
Yeah.
And I don't want it, and I don't want it to. You guys all know that I want something to, but it would just alienate Microsoft right now if they couldn't just run it on Xbox One and PS or Series X and PS5 because Microsoft says you can't do that.
Yeah, which is why I would love if this got delayed. I know that sounds bad, but like,
yeah, but
you know,
how far until like I'm with you. I'm expecting Microsoft to maybe loosen that time frame, but how much are they going to loosen it by? 6 months? Like,
yeah, I'm expecting by next holiday though, or next holiday, holiday 2021. I feel like is when Microsoft will back down a little bit from their 18-month window, and they will allow 1 or 2 developers to get away with it. But can Far Cry be pushed that far back? Probably not. So
right.
We're gonna have to deal with like 3 huge games.
Yeah, the concern is current gen holding it back. You know.
Yeah, and the answer probably is yes.
Yeah. All right, so that ended the show, and then immediately my head went to we didn't see certain things. So what did we not see?
Yeah, I put a list of 4 games that I can think of. Skull and Bones, which that's dead, right?
I played it, and I guess I just don't
multiple times.
I don't believe anything that I physically have. Like, I don't believe any game that they put in the hands of press or content creators to play. I don't like that's gotten that far. I have a hard time believing it's dead.
Okay, but even then, at a certain point, when they do bring Skull and Bones out or talk about it, they have to just release it the same day they talk about it. At this point, right?
Unless they're putting an extensive single player campaign into this game, which is what people were asking for.
I don't think we're gonna get a full Skull and Bones single player multiplayer. I think we might get Skull and Bones the multiplayer experience, and then it just gets shadow dropped like that day.
I think if you're gonna get Skull and Bones the multiplayer experience, we would have seen it already.
I think it's been so long that that's the best we can get from it. To where, because something's wrong, because it's been what, 4 years, 4 years since they first shown it. I know you played it at 2 E3s.
Yeah.
And it wasn't last year. So you played it like 3 years ago, or it was shown 3-4 years ago. To me, it's either dead or it's going to be at the point where they're just going to release it as a multiplayer game and it's just going to come out. And then
or you just save your grace and try to free to play it. I don't know.
Beyond Good and Evil 2 was also not shown.
But we're also learning over time that you and I have learned that is handled almost. It's produced by Ubisoft, but I feel like it's handled by a third party.
Well, technically, the director, Ansel, I forget the director's name, but I know he no longer works for Ubisoft, or he didn't when they announced Beyond Good and Evil 2, and they brought him in as a contract.
Mm-hmm.
I think they brought in his host studio.
This is my game. You guys are just putting it on a disc for me. So I do what I want.
But we still haven't seen it, and it's been 2 E3s since we've seen it.
Yeah. Or
2 years since we've seen it. I got to stop saying E3s like E3s exist. Gods and Monsters. That was the Zelda experience. I think it was called Gods and Monsters.
Yeah, which kind of just ended last year's press conference and got a date, and people were like, "What? Huh?"
And then a demo leaked on Stadia a month or 2 ago. So it's probably close to being it, but maybe they'll be shown later. And then, of course, the beautifully titled Rainbow Six Quarantine, which I wonder why we didn't see this game.
So that's supposed to be the PvE Rainbow Six style game, like the cooperative player versus environment game that looked really cool. Kind of gave a little bit of a Resident Evil vibe to it, but with the Rainbow Six tacticalness.
Mm-hmm.
For me, those games are all no talk of Breakpoint at all. They released something prior to it with a title update trailer that I because I was seeing the trailers hit my YouTube feed while I was at work today, and I was like, oh, maybe they talked about Breakpoint. Nope. And
maybe in a pre-show.
Yeah,
maybe
and then
they showed that in a pre-show.
No talk about Division 2.
Which, I forgot Division 2.
Not that they've announced that they just kicked off a new season, and they released they're releasing a raid. They just released a raid, so they have produced some content for it, but no plan for we're going to be coming up this and then again they talked about there's going to be a second Ubisoft Forward, but you're coming up on the second year of Division 2 very soon. or the third year. Like it came out in March, so I guess we're almost 9 months away from the third year of the game. Whether at this point in time in the Division's life cycle, we had already the Division 2 was a thing that we knew was coming, and to see what they may or may not do with Division franchise going forward is interesting, because I think doing Division 3 might be a mistake versus trying to build on to Division 2, similar to what Destiny's been doing.
Yeah. And then no Just Dance, which isn't surprising. I'm sure Just Dance is doing fine with whatever it does.
I think it's something that they have a really hard time showing off in a digital only format. It was always interesting and fascinating when they showed it at a press conference where there was a couple hundred people watching, or they had it on their show floors where they had physical dancers there. But I think to try to show that off on a digital only event just wasn't going to work.
And I wonder with Just Dance Just Dance, I think this year, or I don't know if it was the last game, they introduced like a subscription model to where it's just like $3 or $5 a month. You can get like an unlimited catalog. So I wonder if there's no reason for them to show Just Dance, because they might just run with the subscription service over releasing a new title every year. But yeah, those are the Ubisoft games that I can think of that didn't show up, but we'll get another Ubi Forward, and if I had a guess, I would assume that would take place during Paris Games Week, which I believe was scheduled for like the last week of October this year. Ubisoft, a French company, maybe would want to do Paris Games Week, which then would let them get a chance to talk about Assassin's Creed and Watch Dogs one last time before they launch. And then they could then have concrete enough stuff to talk about their next-gen plans.
Yeah. Do you think that the Xbox event at the end of this month and then the rumored PlayStation 5 State of Play at the end of August is slowing any of these announcements down for them?
I wouldn't be surprised to see, like, Gods and Monsters pop up at, like, the Microsoft press conference coming up, or, like, the Sony State of Play. But I don't know if it slowed them down in terms of surprises, just because I feel like we know everything that Ubisoft is working on right now, and they can't really jump ahead. They can't announce a new Rainbow Six game unless they pull out Splinter Cell for Sony or Microsoft. I don't think there's anything they have up their sleeves that they can talk about, because all their big franchises are coming out within the next year.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, it's fine. Like I'm good with what they showed. This is pretty much kind of what I expected. They are a heavy hitter, but they're just kind of like one of these ones that they're just going to jab you to death, versus they don't have a knockout punch, but they can just sit there and just hit you in the chin a whole bunch of times until you either you give up or you get knocked out, one of the two.
Yeah.
But there's nothing that's gonna come out of blindside you that they produce. Like, what you're getting when you buy one of these, when you buy a Far Cry or you buy Rainbow Six or any of these games. Like, you know what's coming.
They're Mayweather, not Tyson.
Yeah. So, but again, please let us know. Comment on the Facebook group, Twitter. Let us know what you think of the event. Let us know what you think of the coverage. This will hit our feeds. Obviously, it'll be like everything else that we've done. It'll have a different picture. So if you don't care about the Ubisoft games, you didn't have to listen to it. If you did listen to it, thank you so much. As always, show notes, everything. We have links to the Facebook group, the Discord, Twitter, his Twitter, my Twitter. Again, leaving a review, sharing the show, and supporting us on Patreon if you so choose. Our July episode is live. So you have May, June, and July as bonus content. July episode is origin stories and why we do what we do. And we're still looking for suggestions for other episodes. And our future plans, Microsoft's event is supposed to be the end of July, like July 23rd, 25th.
Yes.
So we'll definitely do something like this. If anybody comes out of left field and hits us with a hard punch that's worth us doing an episode. If all of a sudden Jeff Keighley breaks some major thing during a Summer Games Week, like, we have the ability to sit down and talk about it for half an hour, 45 minutes. So we'll keep producing content for you guys as long as you guys keep consuming it and telling us that you like it.
Yep.
So. All right. I hope everyone has a great time. We will talk to you if you're listening to this in order. The next episode should be on the feed really soon. So
yeah, in the next couple days. See ya.